welcome back to my channel. So I'd just like to go through some more of your comments on the topic of social services. So one of you has said that I think you'd have got household support if you said you can wash up, but at the same time you flood the house. Sadly, even mentioning basic skills gives them an excuse not to offer support. On the other hand, as you stated, if you suggest are alarmingly unable, then they could intervene in an oppressive way. So yes, that's true. I was thinking this myself, that it's almost like the more independent you become, the more you can do, the more they assume you can do everything independently. So it's sending out really contradictory messages, because on the one hand they're all like, oh, independence is great, we need to make people independent. But on the other hand, if you are independent or you have some degree of independence, that then becomes a kind of excuse for them to cut support, because they can then say, well, if you could do that independently, then you can do everything independently. And there's a complete blind spot, a complete ignorance of non-physical forms of disability. It's almost like we're in the dark ages still, like they're completely ignorant of psychological issues, mental health, non-physical disabilities. So yeah, I can wash up, but it's exhausting. It takes me a long time, and it uses up a lot of energy, a lot of spoons, to use good disability speak. And it's the absolute limit of what I can manage. Cooking is my special interest, so I love cooking, and I spend a lot of time cooking. But it's intensive. It's a massive part of my life, but it's the limit of what I can manage in terms of practical stuff. You know what I mean? And they don't seem to understand the notion of limits. They think, oh, you can wash up, therefore you can do that as well, which is really degrading, because I do as much as I can for myself. I cook for myself, I wash up, I do basic self-care, which again is also interpreted as, well, you can do basic self-care, therefore you don't have a problem, you don't need support with this. You could do that independently, sort of thing. So having an independence in some areas is definitely used against you, which is really, really warped. It's like you're in a catch-22 situation. I mean, you're either completely dependent and not independent at all, in which case they would probably see you as some I don't know, pity case or something, and you're likely to end up in care. And then they will do stuff for you, but it wouldn't be on your terms, and it would be really degrading anyway. Or you have some independence, and then they assume you could do everything for yourself. And in doing that, your independence that you have attained can no longer be achieved, because they're putting impossible expectations on you, and you end up essentially reaching nervous breakdown. So your next comment is, this was in relation to when I was saying about how I didn't think your autism was mild because you were living with your parents, sort of thing. And you said that you're not at all offended by your comments on the severity of your ASD, and that you think I am right, and appreciate you being realistic about the situation. It is so hard when verbal ability offsets the challenge. And you were late diagnosed, age 20. So that's similar age when I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed age 21, so very similar age. You were diagnosed age 20 as your parents were scared to tell professionals the truth, as they didn't want to be investigated or accused of bad parenting. A little bit similar to my own parents. They suspected for a long time that I might be autistic, but they were worried about what a label would do. And again, yeah, my mum was concerned as well, worried about being judged on her parenting. It seems to be quite a common theme as well. you were forcibly institutionalized as a young teenager by a psychologist over an OCD misunderstanding, ASD miscommunication, which traumatized you, and you have never trusted anyone after that. You are extremely literal, and you lack theory of mind. You can tell somewhat, you can explain when to use a fire extinguisher, but you don't know that you will be able to quickly see a fire, remember what to do in a fire. So when people ask, can you do X, Y, Z? You think to answer yes, but in reality, you may require significant prompting and ideal circumstances in order to actualise that or execute that task. And those ideal circumstances would be not feeling tired, being organised, and everything going to plan. So yeah, they're really good points, and yeah, it comes down to that kind of disconnect between what we might be able to do in theory, you know, in terms of our verbal understanding. So, you know, in theory, verbally knowing what to do in a fire, for example, you know, someone might be able to ask you these questions and you'd be able to give them really good answers about what to do in a fire. You know intellectually what to do in a fire because you have a high verbal intelligence, and yet in that situation, practically, if there was a fire, you wouldn't know how to execute what you verbally, intellectually know, in which case you would be at significant risk. But because you can verbally give the right answers, people don't understand that does not mean you can execute. So you have executive dysfunction, but a high verbal intellect, which means that you are overestimated in terms of what people think you can do practically. And yeah, I can completely relate to that, same for me as well. Another one of you has said that decisions like this referring to me being denied a cleaner with my me being denied a cleaner through my direct payments. Decisions like this reflect the general social climate which is hostile to those with verbal autism and psychological conditions more broadly. Only physical conditions are real. So the ideology is that only physical conditions are real disabilities and that everyone else needs to change their attitude. So yeah, very good comment indeed. I'd agree, although I agree with that in general, but I think there are even instances of people with physical disabilities who are not believed. But it is nevertheless the case that if you have an invisible disability, then you are particularly likely not to be believed. And you make a point that, people with epilepsy, other invisible conditions, even, back problems, I suppose, would count as well. Conditions, like functional pain disorders and things like that. These are all invisible disabilities where people are often treated with suspicion and not believed. Another one of you says that your advocacy is valuable as you think that the public perception is now that autism means happily married with kids while juggling a career and a busy social life, thanks to the neurodiversity movement. So yeah, there is this kind of danger now, in a way, autism is being talked about in the news, where you have these really high profile, non-impaired celebrities who are now like a public face of autism. There is this risk now that people who are significantly disabled by autism could end up, not being believed even more. particularly if they appear similar to those people, at least on the surface, and yet have radically different, more impairing lives. There is that risk, and I'm not entirely sure what we could do about that. I think probably we just need like different names for people who are more disabled, so that they can kind of be seen as, not the same as, say, people like Melanie Sykes or whatever. Another one of you said that maybe I should ask for an occupational therapy assessment to help you. And if they can't help me, then I would have evidence of that to put forward for funding a cleaner. So that's really good advice, thank you. I've spoken to my dad about that just now, about getting referred to the mental health team, to asking your GP to refer me to an occupational therapist at the mental health team, because I think that could help me. And also potentially even speaking to a psychiatrist or someone like that, like a medical expert, because the more evidence I have about the cleaning problem, if it's specific to cleaning, because the 2018 cognitive assessment, didn't specifically mention cleaning. I need something from an expert to specifically mention my problems with cleaning, which might help me. So thank you a lot for that. That's really good advice. I hadn't even considered it, so that's really good advice. Thank you. Another one of you says that with regard to being turned down for what you need to help you, you said this happened to your son. 7 professional letters stating he needs a wheelchair. However, they don't have one to fit, as he's 6'10", so he was refused as he doesn't need it indoors, and this makes you mad the way his needs are being denied. So again, that just shows how it's happening even with physical disabilities. So not just invisible disabilities. Seems to be across the board this is happening. Another one of you makes a point that obviously social services are not medical specialists. Another one of you says that home cleanliness is an important care need. It is not a luxury or a side issue. The therapy remark shows a total lack of understanding of autism. The therapy would be better used to help with OCD, so that I can navigate the public sphere to get out and about. Plus, what they should be giving me is the security in knowing that the house cleaning needs currently done by my dad will be taken care of in the future. The whole point of direct payments is to give you choice in purchasing which services you need, to prevent you from doing so out of an arrogant assumption they know your capabilities more than you. Goes against the whole rationale of direct payments, and is patronising and infantilising. So yes, I completely agree. Thank you very much for backing me up on that. Yes, it is very patronising and infantilising, and it doesn't show any forward thinking at all, in terms of forward planning. So it's kind of leaves you kind of in a state of perpetual uncertainty, which is really not good for one's mental health. Another one of you says that you've seen documents that said social services are focused on cutting support for autism and learning disabilities. I'll be interested actually if you could post a link to those documents. If you could do so, that'd be really helpful, because I'd like to see those documents. So don't worry if you can't, but if you can, that would be really helpful. Another one of you another comment in reply to my suggestion that you also might have non-verbal learning disability like me. In your case, you are fine with numbers, so unlike me, you don't have dyscalculia, but you do struggle whenever you have to imagine things from different angles and perspectives. You also have very poor visual memory, so you can see an action performed and then it seems to go out of your head and you can't replicate it. You need to travel the same route many times for it to stick in your memory. You need pictures and videos to make learning visual material better, but even then you struggle. So yeah, it does sound to me like you definitely have the NVLD profile just without the dyscalculia. So that's interesting. Another one of you says that, the same person says that it's probable the council has a rule that someone can only be allowed housework help if they're either physically disabled or have the kinds of cognitive difficulties that result in low literacy or supported living. Yeah, we'll be interested to know exactly when the council allows someone to have a cleaner, under which circumstances, and I'm going to ask next week, I want to ask the commissioner who I'm in contact with on this issue in a county council, very high up person. I do want to put it to her, under what circumstances exactly is someone allowed a cleaner, just so that I know, when one would be allowed, because that'd be quite interesting to find out. Do they only give it to those with physical disabilities or low literacy? I'd be interested to know. Another one, if he says that you have the same profile as me, autism and a huge discrepancy in verbal to non-verbal, you get overestimated by support staff. If they took away your verbal IQ, then your overall functioning would be in the low 70s, and 70 is the learning disability cut-off. So yeah, very similar to me. My non-verbal is sort of hovering around 70, even below 70. As a child, it was in the 50s range, so ridiculously low. So why am I expected to perform so much better on things that aren't related to verbal ability is very frustrating. Exactly, I completely share that. Thank you for commenting. It's exactly my problem too. Right, I'm going to move over to video number 2 now because I just want to share some quotes with you about independent living that I thought you might be interested in. So moving over to video number 2 now.